Have you ever wished you could be unshakable? The kind of person who doesn't get rattled by criticism, rejection, loss, or betrayal. Maybe you've dreamed of finally letting go of that silent pain that that eats you up inside even when you're putting on a brave face for everyone else. Maybe you're simply tired of trying to please everyone, tired of acting strong all the time. Maybe all you really want is to rest just for a moment from the pressure of always having to be untouchable. But here's something you might need to hear, something most people won't tell you. As long as you keep trying to run from pain, it'll keep running your life. As long as you're trying to numb yourself, hide, or protect yourself, you're still a prisoner of everything happening around you, of the words that cut deep, the actions that disappoint, the silences that feel like daggers. And listen, that's not weakness. That's just reality for most of us. The only difference is some people are just better at pretending. Carl Jung, one of the biggest names in psychology, once said, "We are not what happens to us, but what we choose to become." And that's the secret. This isn't about becoming cold or untouchable or shutting out the world. It's about bringing to light everything you usually keep in the dark. True strength isn't about never feeling pain. It's about being fully aware of who you are. Even when you're hurting, if you're still watching, it's not by accident. This video is for you, the person who's tired of being hurt by everything and everyone. For you, who feels like you're always at an emotional disadvantage, like other people have some kind of power over you. I want to show you that it doesn't have to be this way, this way. But to get there, you'll have to face some hard truths. And maybe, for the first time, that pain will actually set you free. Let's dive in. You probably believe your pain comes from what's happening outside you, in other people's actions, careless words, betrayals, and abandonment. But here's the harsh reality. None of that can truly hurt you unless there's already an open wound inside. What actually hurts is what these experiences trigger within you. The stories you tell yourself, old traumas you've never healed, the emptiness you try to cover up with strength and pride. Jung teaches us that the pain we feel from the world is just a reflection of what we haven't dealt with internally. That's why some people can go through the worst and stay calm, while others fall apart at a single comment. It's not about what happens, it's about where it hits you. Here's the uncomfortable truth. You keep suffering because, deep down, you think you can control how the world treats you. You keep trying to be good enough, smart enough, strong enough, as if that will somehow keep you safe from pain. But control is an illusion. The more you try to control everything, the more tense and exhausted you become, always bracing for the next blow. Want to stop suffering? Stop trying to protect yourself from suffering. What you really need isn't more control, it's more awareness. As long as you think other people need to change for you to feel better, you'll always be at their mercy. Your freedom starts the moment you realize that nothing from the outside has any power unless it echoes something inside you. That's the real battlefield, the unconscious. What you don't see, don't understand, and don't accept ends up ruling your life. And that's what we're going to explore next. Get ready to go deeper, because that's where real transformation happens. If this is resonating with you, hit that subscribe button and join the community. Thanks for your support. Here's a tough pill to swallow. The biggest lie you've been told is that you're in control of your life. Wake up, because you're not. Not as long as you keep living on autopilot, reacting without knowing why, making choices you later regret. Jung made this clear. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. That's what's happening right now. That pain, that anger out of nowhere, the sadness you can't explain, they're not random. They're signals from parts of you that you've ignored or suppressed. Jung called this territory the unconscious. It's not just a fog of random thoughts. It's a whole system of memories, traumas, desires, and fears you don't want to face, but that still run your life. Ever wonder why certain words or situations destroy you? When other people brush them off, it's because those things touch wounds you haven't healed. You've pushed them under the rug, but now you keep tripping over them. Jung said, "We cannot change anything until we accept it. Condemnation does not liberate, it oppresses." So what have you been doing? Judging yourself, repressing yourself, silencing your real feelings, hoping that would fix things. But the unconscious doesn't disappear because you ignore it. It just finds sneaker ways to show up in toxic relationships, self-sabotage, anxiety, and fear that pops up even when life seems good. This isn't bad luck. It's your unconscious trying to get your attention. But you keep running. If you want to stop being hurt, stop running from what's inside you. Because as long as you don't know your own unconscious, you'll be a puppet of your emotions. The more you try to shield yourself from pain out there, the more exposed you are to pain in here. But there is a way out, and it's not about defending yourself, it's about integrating yourself. Becoming untouchable isn't about resistance, it's about deep self-knowledge. Let's look at what it really means to be unshaken and why real strength doesn't come from armor, but from acceptance. Most people think the only not to get hurt is to close themselves off. They build walls, wear masks, create emotional armor, and tell themselves, "I don't care anymore, nothing gets to me." But inside, they're still bleeding, still hurting, because the real problem isn't feeling too much. The problem is not knowing what you're feeling or why. And that only happens when you don't know yourself. Jung was spot on. Know all the theories, master all the techniques, but as you touch a human soul, be just another human soul. And that soul you keep hiding behind a tough exterior. It's crying out to be seen. Emotional strength isn't about being cold, ignoring pain, avoiding conflict, or acting like nothing bothers you. It's about integration, acceptance, and bringing into the light everything you've buried. You don't become untouchable by putting up walls between yourself and the world. You become untouchable when you realize that nothing can touch what you've already accepted within yourself. When you integrate your shadows, your fears, your flaws, you stop reacting to everything. You start observing, choosing. You're no longer an emotional puppet. That's real freedom. Jung called this individuation, the process of becoming who you really are, not who others expect you to be, not who you think you should be to fit in, but who you are at your core. When light meets shadow, ego meets unconscious. Individuation isn't about being perfect, it's about being whole. And here's the secret: the more you run from pain, the more it chases you, the more you try not to be affected, the more fragile you become. But when you face your wounds, when you accept all that you are, beautiful, ugly, noble, shameful, nothing outside can break you. But this path takes courage. The courage to look within, to drop the masks, to actually feel. Because in the pain, the key to transformation is hidden. And that's what we'll talk about nexting, how suffering, far from being an enemy, can actually open the door to your true strength. Let's go even deeper. Since you were a kid, you learned to hate pain. You were taught that suffering makes you weak, that crying is pointless, that feeling too much just leaves you exposed. So you started running, avoiding, denying. But the more you run from suffering, the more it comes after you. Worse, it changes shape, turns into anxiety, anger, boredom, self-destructive habits you don't even understand. Ignored pain doesn't disappear. It tunnels inside until one day, everything collapses. Jung saw suffering differently. He believed pain was the soul's messenger, the alarm of the unconscious. He said, "Depression is like a lady in black. If she turns up, don't chase her away. Invite her in, offer her a seat, and listen to what she wants to say. But most of us don't listen. We silence ourselves, distract ourselves, numb ourselves, anything to avoid facing what really matters. But what is your pain trying to show you? Suffering hurts so much because you're still at war with yourself. Part of you wants change. Part of you wants to keep things the same. Your ego, so used to control, tries to suffocate that call for transformation. And that's where pain is born. Because change hurts, growth hurts, letting go hurts, cutting toxic ties, shedding old beliefs, allowing what's no longer serving you to die. That's all a kind of mourning, an internal death and rebirth. But in that space, when everything has fallen apart, Jung you. When pain strips you bare, you finally see who you really are. No masks, no performance. And that's when suffering becomes sacred, because it brings you face to face with the only thing that can set you free, yourself. Jung knew this. He understood that suffering isn't a system failure. It's part of the process. Pain isn't the end. It's the beginning of the journey toward wholeness. The problem is most people give up before they cross that dark valley. They run back to the surface. But not you. If you've made it this far, you're ready for the crossing. Next, we're going to look at how this crossing happens, how the path of individuation, as lonely and brutal as it can be, is what finally sets you free. We're getting deeper now. Few people have the courage to start this journey, and even fewer finish it. This path doesn't promise comfort or guarantees or protection for your ego. It actually destroys your ego. Individuation is about becoming who you are, but that means unlearning who you think you are, and that's more painful than any outside rejection. You start to realize that most of what defined you was just survival, not really living. You're not your achievements, your traumas, or the image you built to be loved or respected. Jung, all of that was just armor. But surviving isn't living. Individuation is life's call to go beyond survival. It's when your unconscious starts pushing everything you've hidden to the surface. Jung said you have to dissolve the persona, the mask you wear for convenience. In other words, you have to tear off your own skin to see what's underneath. That's how you become untouchable. Not because nothing can hurt you, but because you've already faced the fire. You've stared down your monsters, looked shame and needness in the eye, and said, I see you. You don't control me anymore. This inner clarity, this understanding of your own darkness, gives you a strength that doesn't depend on anyone's approval or recognition. You don't need to be loved by everyone, win every argument, or always look strong. You know who you are, and no one can take that away. True emotional armor isn't a shell, it's a core. It's the integration of all your parts into a center of consciousness that stays solid, even in a storm. You still feel pain, but it doesn't break you. You might get hurt, but you don't lose yourself. You've stopped living on the surface and started living with death. But that depth comes at a cost. Sometimes loneliness. Not because you're actually alone, but because few people can walk this path with you. Most are still trapped on the surface, hiding behind masks, afraid to feel. As you free yourself, you start to drift away, not out of pride, but because you no longer fit in where you used to hide. And that brings us to the final piece, consciousness as your shield. It's not strength that protects you, it's clarity. That's what we'll talk about in the last part on how consciousness is the only thing that can truly set you free. We're almost there. Now that you've come this far, let's be clear, nothing, absolutely nothing, will protect you from pain on the outside if you're still unconscious on the inside. Words will still sting, rejection will still hurt, loss will still break you until you wake up. And awakening isn't some magical moment. It's a daily choice. It's looking within, even when it hurts. It's owning everything you feel, without blaming others, the past, or fate. Jung said, what you resist persists. What you accept transforms. You've spent your life resisting the fear of not being enough, the pain of rejection, the ache of loneliness. So you hid. You silenced yourself. You tried to control everything, to be perfect, to be strong, and all of that brought you here, exhausted from fighting the world and yourself. But now you know, true emotional immunity isn't hardness. It's clarity. It's clarity, not about building thicker armor. It's about expanding your awareness. Because when you understand your triggers, your patterns, your wounds, other people's actions, stop having the power to destroy you. You still feel, but you don't drown. You still hurt, but you don't lose yourself. And that changes everything. What shields you isn't hiding from life. It's diving into it. Those who stay on the surface get tossed by every wave. Those who go deep find silence, stability, and power down below. That's where you're headed. When you start living from that place of integration, presence, and acceptance, the world might try to knock you down, but it can't reach you the way it used to. If this video spoke to you, drop a comment below. Jung, I choose awareness. Let's start a movement of people who don't just want to survive by pretending to be strong, but actually want to live with truth. And don't forget, the next video is part of this journey too. Stick with it. Real transformation only begins when you keep going, one step at a time. See you there.